Fabulous. All right, so again, my name is Kathryn Royce, and today I'll be walking you through the DP state survey method, a new semi-quantitative method for collecting state data during a collection assessment. So first things first, I just want to let you know that a copy of these slides is available on my website, Reference for Mineral Care. That's the link. And there's also a How to Excel version, which will walk you through tips for making the most of Excel during the surveying process. So first things first, or second thing second rather, there's 3 parts to assessing a collection's well-being, so that being state, condition, and risk. Previous methods often conflate state and condition, which complicates data collection due to insufficient delineation between a collection's tangible and intangible properties. The DP method, however, focuses solely on state and any changes to it. This allows for more quantitative data to be collected. The method was also explicitly designed to tackle previously identified issues in collection surveying, chiefly those of subjectivity, ambiguity, and variability. This is achieved through the method's signature trait, which are the deterioration phenomena, abbreviated as DP, because obviously that can be a tongue twister sometimes. So these are criteria that are visual indicators of change and specific to the collection being surveyed. Only the presence or absence of phenomena are noted. There's no grading, ranking, scaling, or determination of extent or severity. This is a very deliberate part of the design, in part to maintain focus on state. It also simplifies the surveying process to a series of yes or no questions, which avoids the variability inherent to categorization. This also greatly decreases total surveying time and allows for the survey to be performed by non-experts. So here we have photographic examples of the 16 DP I selected for surveying minerals. So in addition to these photographs, I provide verbal definitions so that all involved, both in the present and the future, have a similar understanding of the criteria as possible. So as with any assessment, you're going to have some sort of like prep. You have prep work of some sort. So these are, quote, the 5 steps that I have gone through. And I'd also like to note that you'd only have to do this once. So if you're going to take on surveying for multiple years, the pre-survey work you only do before the first survey. Any subsequent assessments that you do, it's just a review to make sure everything's still applicable and does not need any updating. So the first step is obviously identify the collection that you're going to want to survey and why, and these decisions will shape how you approach data collection analysis. You'll then choose your criteria to reflect how the objects in the collection deteriorate. You'll then define the DP, both verbally and pictorially, and then you will probably want to collect some data from your collection management system. The exact fields will vary based off of the collection exactly, but it should include section and object numbers as well as basic object names or identifiers such as pyrite, cubic, pheasant, skeletal, because this information is key to ensuring that all subsequent data is properly attached to the correct object. And then you'll be ready to set up your spreadsheet. I'm not gonna lie, it does take some time, but once you're done doing it once, that's fine. You don't have to do it again. And then you'll populate and structure your spreadsheet based off your CMS data. So there's 6 parts to the spreadsheet, at least the version I've designed. The first part are worksheets, which simply divide the collection into its component groups. This avoids having thousands of objects in one spreadsheet. Next, we have organization columns, which help sort the items by how they're anticipated to be found in the store and within their component groups. This allows you to anticipate what's coming next during surveying. Specimens that are in the same drawer or cabinet will appear together in the spreadsheet, which greatly speeds up data entry. Next, we have location columns, which contain information about an object's exact location in the store. So this is beneficial to collect if not already known. 1, to help you find things in the future, but 2, it's important to have this information for hazardous objects. Next, we have the identification columns, which are the fields of immediately obvious characteristics that are relevant to that specimen. And this just provides visual clues for correct data attribution. Then we have the DP columns themselves, which is the main data collection fields, where you enter the ones and zeros. And then if you so choose, you can have additional notes columns, which document any conservation and curatorial actions or concerns. So here's a bit of an interactive approach. So surveying itself is fairly straightforward and pretty quick. So here is an example object. We have, for online, we have an aggregate of pyrite. So you just pick your object, you turn it over, looking for your DP. So I see it's tarnished, dull, a bit dark, and yeah, there's a crack. So we have 4 DP. So I'll enter in a series of ones and zeros as we see here on the slide, and then I'll collect any additional information. So assuming this was part of Oxford University's collection, it would be in cabinet 6, drawer F. We don't know where it is, so that's why it's an F. And I was also collecting habit data, so it would be pyrite crystals in an aggregate form. Ta-da. And that's about a minute, and then you move on to the next specimen. So I cannot just save your data frequently. You do not want to be losing significant amount of data. You do not want to be reserving stuff. You will definitely go insane. And I also highly recommend treating the first few days as a pilot just to get into the groove and sort out any issues that you're having and make sure that things are working as smoothly as possible. So it's also a-okay to skip specimens. So this method was designed with the intent of being able to survey every single specimen if you wanted to. But that's insane. I mean, I would literally go insane if I had to survey 60,000 objects. But I got pretty close. I mean, I surveyed like 20,000. I'm still standing. But this is because I was very selective in what I was actually surveying. I only surveyed stuff that were in the cabinets and the drawers, large specimens, but I also did a lot of skipping. I skipped microenvironments, those that were bagged for asbestos, as well as a significant portion of those that were part of well-represented species. So these are species that contain more than 50 specimens. So I would survey somewhere between 50 and 200 specimens, and usually the exact number was about 25% of the total specimens of that species. And this was just to maintain statistical rigor. So that's surveying. We've done the pre-survey, we've done the survey. Now we're going to start moving into the analysis. And essentially, all analysis is to identify deterioration. So essentially, the presence of multiple DP suggests that deterioration has occurred. It is out of the scope of the survey to determine whether or not it's active, simply because you cannot determine activity based off of visual observations alone. However, certain combinations of DP do suggest potential reaction types, and these are 6 I have determined for minerals thus far. So the very basic forms of analysis is just simple exploratory statistics performed in your spreadsheet program of choice with just the survey data, and it's facilitated with pivot tables to see patterns in the data. It is then correlated to reaction types. And these reaction types are classified as first and second order. So first order are reactions that affect more than half of the collection, and second order affects less than half. So there are a few metrics I also calculate. First, we have total DP, which is the sum of all present DP. So essentially just the sum of all the ones and zeros in a given row. So if you have an ADP of 4, like we saw with the pyrite, that just means that there were 4 DP seen in that object. Next, we have average DP or ADP. This is the average of all total DP. So an ADP of 4 would mean that of all the specimens that you're examining, they display on average 4 DP. And then finally, we have percent DP, which is the percent average of a DP's occurrence. So here it's the sum of all the ones in a DP column divided by the total number of specimens being examined. So if you have 10% cracking, that means 10 out of 100 specimens display cracking of some sort. So then these percent DPs are color-coded to reveal which are used to identify the potential reaction types. So I'm going to demonstrate this with an example back to good old pyrite. So the percent DP column is essentially one of these rows, just to understand the translation here. So here we see that dull and tarnish affect more than 3/4 of all pyrites surveyed. So this to me tells that the first reaction type is superficial oxidation. This is supported by the percents for dark and color change. Cracking at 56% is significant, but in this instance, it's largely ignored because cracking can occur for various different reasons. But there are certain instances, oh wow, cracking is important. And then all the DP that are characteristic of pyrite decay do appear in less than 25% of all the species specimens surveyed, meaning this is oxidation at depth. And here we have two photographs depicting the difference between these. So you may at this point say, oh, I figured out all that I needed to know, but sometimes you may want to look a little bit further into your analysis. So we'll just extend the exploratory stats to contextualize survey data with additional quantitative information, such as environmental data or things off of your collection management system. So a simple but important example I'd like to highlight is location in the store. So you can essentially map ADP onto the cabinets and drawers to find hotspots that may indicate sources of deterioration, such as leaks or pests. And then you can also import your CMS data into your analysis spreadsheet and use that as categories or filters with your pivot tables to identify areas of interest, such as key contributors, where most of your specimens are coming from, or further questions for exploration. So the question then becomes, how far do you push your data? My response is as far as it'll go while maintaining statistical significance. So long as your data subsets contain of 30 or more individuals, it's fine. But pushing does lead to greater insight, primarily in revealing trends and relationships, as well as areas for further research. So here again with pyrite, we can see that there is a difference between the all the pyrite surveyed and the Elba pyrite. There's also a slight difference between the Rio mine and Elba more generally. I'd also like to point out here that the patterning can tell you essentially what to expect from a specimen. So if you get the patterns but have not seen the specimen, you can essentially envision what that specimen will look like, which is something that most methods the data is not compatible with. Time's up. Okay. Well, essentially, it's minimal with more rigorous statistical methods. Get in touch if you're interested. And here's a very brief summary. I'll keep this slide up in questions. But essentially, this method produces semi-quantitative and statistically rigorous data. It's customizable to your collection type. It's fairly fast, and it's compatible with any spreadsheet program. And if you want more information or are interested in any through tutorials or such, do get in touch. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so does anybody have any questions?
I know.
Oh, yes, there's a lady over there. Thank you, Claire.
This survey it's a yes or no question. Know if the mineral starts or ends.
So
Repeat the question.
Okay, so this was a question about who can perform the survey. So essentially, you do want to have some experience to define the DP, but once the DP themselves are defined, so you say, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to define darker and give examples, then you can pass it on to volunteers. And it also, like, there is some degree of expertise required to kind of identify deterioration as well. So you kind of see like what a typical pyrite oxidation is. You need to kind of know that reaction to see it in the patterning. But essentially, the brute force work of going in and looking at collections, seeing the DP, that can be done by anybody.
I think there is a question in the chat.
So how do you recommend non-mineralists to switch between colour, luster, and transparency differences that are not the mineral formation caused by deterioration? So I think that's actually.
Yeah, so so it's essentially about defining color differences, if I'm correct. And this would ultimately boil down to your collection itself. So for me, I've defined darker as anything that's darker than the original mineral color. So we have an example here at the bottom of cinnabar, which is a bright red, and here it's not so bright, so that's darker. So long as it looks darker of that same color, or if it's going towards black, is my example. But again, it would depend on your collection type. Yeah. Oh, did that answer the question?
There's a question up there. One there.
I can see that you collected loads of really good data in your project.
Thank you.
Just wondering if you found a way, or if you even attempted to get that data up into the collections management system.
Okay, yes, this is the next part. This is definitely going to be included in the conference proceeding, by the way. Oh yeah, this is about putting the data into your CMS. So essentially, at Oxford, we figured out a way of importing Excel spreadsheet files back into EMU, which is their system that they're using. I personally have not done that work, so I can't explain the details, but we will write up about that and provide that. So stay tuned.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Your talk was always excellent.
Yes, thank you.